And action!
Good morning, enjoy yourselves today. We live in a zoo. This is home. Antonina Z'Binska is married to Jan. He's the zookeeper of the Warsaw Zoo, so the two of them run a zoo. In World War II, when her zoo is bombed and they're forcing the Jews into the ghetto, she and her husband decide to risk their lives and the lives of their children, smuggle people out of the ghetto and hide them in the zoo.
The country's completely overrun.
They're forcing Jews out of their homes. They're taking us all to the ghetto.
We could hide them. We have room. Bring as many as you can. She created a sanctuary out of her zoo. And not only did she save their lives, but she bolstered hope and fostered love in a time of darkness.
They could have gotten out of the city when everyone was fleeing after the bombing in 1939, but they chose to stay and save Jewish refugees.
At great risk to themselves, just because it was the right thing to do, I find deeply impressive.
I was so moved and inspired by Antonina and the empathy she has for other people.
How long can I stay?
We'll stay till it's over.
Antonina's story had slipped between the seams of history, as radically compassionate stories sometimes do, and especially stories by women. And I couldn't allow that. She was too important, and she represents a kind of heroism that is taking place every single day on our planet.
I wanted to make a movie from this material that honored the millions that died in that war by celebrating the hundreds that didn't and the extraordinary circumstances of their saving, thanks to the Z'Binskis.
What a terrible time you must have had. Whenever I play any part, it's important to do as much research as possible. So I read the book, The Zookeeper's Wife, and it was very informative, and especially when thinking of what she was going through, because it's in her own words. A lot of the, that's what the book is based on, her journals. Then I went to the Warsaw Zoo, met with Teresa, Antonina's daughter, and got to ask her questions about things that weren't in the novel. I said, if your mother was an animal, what kind of animal would she be? Things like that. She said, a cat. And so little things that helped me develop the character. I went to Auschwitz because it was important for me to feel the energy of that space. German troops come every morning. You can't make a sound.
The fact that Jessica is playing Antonina, she fills it with everything I imagined this character to be like.
I feel as though I was writing this role for her even before I knew that she was going to play it. There's something about Jessica there's like a delicacy and a beauty and a grace to her, and she exudes heart and kindness. And inside, she's very, very strong and very focused, and I think those are Antonina's qualities.
She always reminded me of an actress of that time. So it's very convincing also in such a period film that we are making to see Jessica in it. It's just, sometimes when I saw her on set, it was just a perfect picture. It was so convincing, the way she moved and dealt with the animals and spoke and everything. So I'm a huge fan, and even more so now after this experience.
I see a way out of this, my friend. That's why I've come. You need to listen to me now. You need to trust me. Now, I could take your prize animals to Germany as alone. We give them sanctuary. You know you can trust my word on this. And when the war is over, I can return them to you.
But what if the war comes to Germany?
A terrible thought, I know. And a personal nightmare for me, but I must tell you, the Allied forces are very weak. I expect this to be over very soon.
What I found in Daniel was a collaborator who really understood the complexity of Heck and was not afraid to play it. Heck's a very, very fine zoologist and an animal lover, and in that way he and Antonina share something that nobody else does.
I want to rescue the best of your breeds, and I can secure them a future no matter what might come, and we can do this together, Frau Z'Binska. We can save your animals together. What do you think?
Yes.
At first, we get to know him as a friend of Jan and Antonina, but then it changes after the occupation of the Germans, because then he changes and it becomes obvious that he is supporting the Nazi party.
Have you been keeping secrets from me?
Daniel Bruhl, you know, brings such subtlety and nuance to the role of a Nazi. You know, he's not the moustache-twirling Nazi villain at all. He's playing a very, very complex man.
What have you been up to in your little zoo?
I've been a fan of Daniel Bruhl. One thing that really shocked me about working with him was how funny he was. And he brought this great sense of levity, which I think was really important for the story, because every scene is so important and rich and heartbreaking, and you feel just really depressed. But then in between takes, Daniel's there to lighten the mood. And I think it was so important for the morale on set, but also important for the character he was playing, because he's playing a pretty dark person, and he's able to give it a sense of humanity that you may not have with someone who just came in with only darkness.
They're coming!
There are people I know, people trying to help. They have trucks, they have guns, and they want to use the zoo as a way station.
What do you mean?
A place to hide Jews until safe houses can be found for them.
A friend is different. One friend, but more than one. It's dangerous, Jan. You said it yourself.
They're starving, Antonina. 2 kilometers away, they're trapped and starving like rats in a cellar.
Jan Z'Binski was a very well-respected intellectual in Warsaw, and because he was the world-renowned zoologist, he was the biggest name at that time in zoology, and he had one of the most renowned zoos in the world, the Warsaw Zoo.
Johann Heldenberg is a revelation. I'm so happy that this will be the movie that introduces him pretty much to a worldwide audience. He's like an old-fashioned movie star.
Go. Thank you. Go. Right.
He's a really solid force in the world of this movie, and yet he's so sensitive and he's so emotionally open. And those qualities, you know, to be very masculine and yet completely emotionally open is very unusual. I think very exciting.
Stay safe, my beauty.
Put him in Herr Heck's truck.
I love working with animals and children, and when you're an actor, it's a great challenge because they're so in the moment. You never know what they're going to do, and they can always surprise you. It's wonderful to react to that. Also, I love animals and children.
She had a preternatural gift for communicating with animals and understanding how they perceive the world. And as a result, they felt very safe around her.
I worked very closely with the animal wranglers. And so what I would do is, before the takes for that scene with Lily, I would feed her a bunch of apples, and then right before action, or right at action, I would show her an apple, and then I'd walk away and I'd like hide the apple. So she knew that I was the one to go to for the treat. So it's a trick, but that way the trunk, her playing with me, she's actually looking for food.
The secret is don't direct them. Let them be. You know, enjoy the privilege of being able to shoot them in a really sensitive and organic way, but don't ask of them anything that they don't organically want to do in any moment. They're perfect how they are. Yeah, nothing I can tell a tiger to be a better tiger.
I knew that if I just created an environment, and thank goodness there was Niki there who created it for me, but if I got to know the animals and they knew that I was never going to demand something of them and they could feel safe with me, that I wasn't going to get hurt, that they weren't going to get hurt, that it could be a very loving, spiritual experience.
My father died. He was shot in St. Petersburg. I was about your age.
I love working with Niki. She is so incredibly intelligent and fierce. She has a very strong point of view, and that's important for me when finding a director to work with. You never felt like the set was ever getting away from her, and I felt like she was a great collaborator. I could come forward and try whatever I wanted and take risks, and she was always there to support me.
We were taken in by friends sometimes, or by strangers. We were running for so long. No one knows how hard it is. A life in hiding. You can never tell who your enemies are, or who to trust.
The fact that it's set in a zoo is so intriguing to me because in a way it's really discussing what is human and what is animal and what is a cage and what isn't a cage. And so in directing the movie and working with the script, I was always thinking about the tension between those two things, and a lot of the kind of visual storytelling is preoccupied by that.
At the end of the day, it's a movie about hope, about family, and about love. I think what it shows is no matter how dark life can be, how dark it gets, love will always be there and you can find it.
It's a story about seeing people who are judged or perceived as the other and recognizing that they are not the other, that we're all animals, we're all the same species.
Some might say another film about the Holocaust, but it's a different story. And all these little stories, the story behind Schindler's List, the story behind The Zookeeper's Wife, The Pianist, all these stories need to be told and retold.
I think Jan and Antonina would like people to know what ordinary people, so-called ordinary people, can rise to in a time of great evil, that there can still be great goodness that can take place.
People think, well, I'm not a politician, I'm not a celebrity, I don't have a huge platform, there's nothing I can do. And that's actually not true. Look at what Antonina did. When you ask yourself the question, what would I have done in World War II? What you're doing today is what you would have done in World War II. So are you living your life to help others? Are you protecting those in need? It's the perfect timing for this film to come out.
Maybe that's why I love animals so much. You look in their eyes, and you know exactly what's in their hearts.